You think you're free. You tell yourself you make your own choices, follow your own path, live by your own rules. But what if I told you that right now, as you watch this video, you're performing exactly as someone else scripted? What if every rebellious thought you've had, every independent choice you've made, was actually programmed into you by forces you refuse to acknowledge? Carl Jung warned us, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. But here's the brutal truth: you don't want to make it conscious. You prefer the comfortable prison of other people's expectations because facing your authentic self terrifies you more than death itself. Today, we're going to hold up a mirror, and in that mirror, you're going to see 7 unmistakable signs that you've surrendered your soul to the collective, that you're not living your life, but performing someone else's script. The question is, are you brave enough to keep looking? Jung discovered something that should horrify every person who claims to value freedom. Most of what we call ourselves isn't actually us at all. It's what he termed the persona mask we wear to fit into society's expectations. But here's where it gets sinister. We don't just wear this mask for others. We wear it so convincingly that we forget we're wearing it at all. You see, Jung identified the human psyche as containing not just our conscious ego, but a vast unconscious realm filled with what he called complexes, autonomous patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior that operate independently of our conscious will. These complexes don't serve you, they serve the collective. They keep you predictable, manageable, profitable, and the most insidious complex of all, the one Jung called the shadow, all the parts of yourself that you've rejected, denied, and projected onto others. Your shadow contains not just your darkness, but your authentic power, your true desires, your real potential. But acknowledging your shadow means admitting you've been living a lie. It means confronting the terrifying possibility that everything you think you want might be what someone else programmed you to want. So instead, you keep feeding the collective machine, playing the role assigned to you, telling yourself it's your choice. But your unconscious knows better. It's screaming at you through depression, anxiety, addictions, and that gnawing sense that something fundamental is missing from your life. Let's start with the most obvious sign you've become a validation-seeking machine. Every decision you make, every word you speak, every image you post, it's all calibrated for applause. You've turned your entire existence into a performance piece designed to win approval from people whose opinions shouldn't matter to you. Jung called this the inflation of the persona. You've become so identified with your social mask that you've forgotten there's a real person underneath. You check your likes, your comments, your career achievements, your relationship status as if these external metrics could somehow fill the void where your authentic self used to be. But here's what's really happening. You're participating in what Jung identified as mass-mindedness, the psychological regression that occurs when individuals lose their connection to their inner truth and instead adopt the thoughts, feelings, and values of the crowd. You think you're being social. Actually, you're being psychologically colonized, and the system loves this. It needs you to need external validation because validated people are predictable people. They buy the right products, vote the right way, think the right thoughts. They're controllable. So ask yourself, when was the last time you did something purely for yourself, with no consideration for how others would react? When did you last express an opinion that risked social disapproval? If you can't remember, you're not living your life, you're living theirs part. Second sign is even more insidious. You've become a master at rationalizing your surrender. Every time you choose security over authenticity, comfort over growth, acceptance over truth, you spin it as wisdom, maturity, pragmatism. Jung understood this mechanism perfectly. He called it compensation, the unconscious process by which we create psychological equilibrium by telling ourselves stories that make our cowardice seem reasonable, But compensation isn't healing, it's psychological Novocaine. It numbs the pain without addressing the wound. You wanted to be an artist. Art doesn't pay the bills. You wanted to travel the world. I have responsibilities. You wanted to speak your truth. It's not worth the drama. But these aren't reasons, they're symptoms. Symptoms of a psyche that has been trained to see freedom as irresponsible and authenticity as selfish. And here's the cruel irony: the very responsibilities you're hiding behind were likely imposed on you by the same system that benefits from your compliance. You took on debt for a degree you didn't need, bought a house you couldn't afford, had children you weren't ready for, all because that's what successful adults do. Now you're trapped, and you call your trap maturity. But Jung warned us the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Every compromise you rationalize is a piece of your soul you're trading for the illusion of security, and the market is always open for more. The third sign reveals itself in your addiction to comparison. You can't enjoy your own life because you're too busy measuring it against everyone else's highlight reel. Social media has turned existence into a competition you never signed up for, but can't stop playing. Jung would recognize this immediately as projection, the unconscious mechanism by which we see in others what we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. But here's the twist: you're not just projecting your shadow onto others. You're projecting your unlived potential onto them. Every time you feel envy, you're being shown a path you abandoned. Every time you feel less than, you're being confronted with a version of yourself you were too afraid to become. But instead of recognizing these feelings as guidance from your unconscious, you use them as evidence of your inadequacy. The system has weaponized your natural capacity for comparison. It needs you to feel inadequate because inadequate people are consuming people. They buy more, work harder, settle for less, all in pursuit of an impossible standard that keeps moving just out of reach. But here's what Jung knew: that the system hopes you never discover individuation. The process of becoming who you truly are isn't about becoming better than others. It's about becoming immune to comparison entirely. It's about recognizing that your path is so uniquely yours that comparison becomes meaningless. When you stop comparing, you stop consuming. When you stop consuming, you start creating. And creators are dangerous to systems built on compliance. The fourth sign is perhaps the most tragic. You've learned to mistrust your own instincts. That gut feeling telling you something's wrong, you've been trained to ignore it. That inner voice suggesting a different path, you've been taught to silence it. That spark of intuition guiding you toward your truth, you've been conditioned to rationalize it away. Jung called this our connection to the collective unconscious, the deeper layer of psyche that contains not just personal material, but the wisdom of our species. Your instincts aren't random impulses. They're evolutionary intelligence speaking through you. But civilized society has taught you to fear this wisdom because it threatens the artificial structures that keep you compliant. Think about it. When did you last trust a hunch that contradicted conventional wisdom? When did you last follow your passion, despite everyone telling you it was impractical? When did you last honor your body's signals about what's healthy for you versus what experts recommend? You've been systematically disconnected from your internal guidance system and made dependent on external authorities, doctors, teachers, politicians, influencers, algorithms, all telling you what to think, feel, want, and do. They've convinced you that your instincts are primitive and unreliable, while their systems are sophisticated and trustworthy. But Jung understood something revolutionary: the unconscious is not less intelligent than consciousness. It's more intelligent. It processes vastly more information, recognizes patterns consciousness misses, and operates with a wisdom that spans generations. When you ignore your instincts, you're not being rational. You're cutting yourself off from your deepest source of intelligence. The system needs you to distrust yourself because self-trusting people are ungovernable. They make decisions based on inner knowing rather than external pressure. They can't be manipulated through fear because they're guided by something deeper than anxiety. They're dangerous. Sign number 5 exposes your participation in collective self-deception. You've become complicit in avoiding uncomfortable truths about yourself, your relationships, your society, your life choices. You've mastered the art of looking away just when things get real. Jung called this the transcendent function, the psychological process by which we integrate opposing forces within ourselves to reach higher consciousness. But transcendence requires facing what we've been avoiding. It demands we stop running from the shadow aspects of our reality. You know your relationship is dying, but you won't have the conversation. You know your career is meaningless, but you won't make the change. You know the system is rigged, but you won't stop playing the game. You know you're living someone else's life, but you won't begin the painful process of discovering your own. Instead, you've become an expert at what Jung called psychological dissociation, splitting off from parts of your experience that threaten your comfortable illusions. You scroll past the homeless person, change the channel during the documentary about factory farming. Avoid the friend who's struggling with addiction, not because you don't care, but because caring would force you to confront how your choices contribute to the very problems you claim to oppose. This avoidance isn't accidental, it's engineered. The system counts on your willingness to look away because widespread awakening would threaten its existence. Every uncomfortable truth you avoid is a pillar supporting the structure of your psychological imprisonment. But Jung understood that what we refuse to face doesn't disappear, it gains power in the darkness. The truth you're avoiding isn't going away, it's growing stronger, waiting for you to find the courage to turn around and meet it face to face. The sixth sign reveals perhaps the most dangerous surrender you've given. Away your moral authority to institutions, experts, and influencers who promise to think for you. You've become what Jung called unconscious, not literally asleep, but psychologically passive, allowing others to determine what's right and wrong, true and false, valuable and worthless. This isn't about following reasonable advice or learning from experts. This is about the wholesale abdication of your responsibility to think, feel, and judge for yourself. You've become a moral consumer, shopping for ethics in the marketplace of popular opinion, rather than developing your own relationship with truth. When the authority figures change their minds, you change yours. When the consensus shifts, you shift with it. When the experts contradict each other, you wait for someone else to tell you which expert to believe. You've become what Jung warned against: a man who is unconscious of himself, acts in a blind, instinctive way, and is in addition fooled by all the illusions that arise when he sees everything that he is not conscious of in himself coming to meet him from outside as projections upon his neighbor. But here's what you're really doing. You're using external authority as a shield against the terrifying responsibility of authentic choice. Because if you make your own moral decisions, you become responsible for the consequences. If those authorities make them for you, you can always blame them when things go wrong. The system has created a perfect moral dependency. It provides you with ready-made opinions on every issue, pre-packaged values for every situation, instant ethical answers for every dilemma. All you have to do is choose which authority to follow: conservative or liberal, religious or secular, traditional or progressive. But notice you never have to develop your own relationship with truth. Jung knew this was spiritual suicide. Your vision becomes clear when you look into your heart. Who looks outside dreams, who looks inside awakens. But awakening means accepting responsibility for your own moral universe. It means you can no longer hide behind the crowd when your choices cause harm. The seventh and final sign is the most insidious because it masquerades as wisdom. You've confused comfort with happiness, security with fulfillment, the absence of pain with the presence of joy. You've built your entire life around avoiding discomfort, not realizing that comfort is the enemy of growth. And growth is the only path to genuine satisfaction. Jung understood this paradox perfectly. He wrote, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain." But modern society has sold you the opposite message, that life should be comfortable. That struggle indicates failure. That any form of suffering means you're doing something wrong, so you've optimized for comfort. You take the safe job, choose the predictable relationship, live in the familiar neighborhood, think the acceptable thoughts. You've created a life so padded with comfort that nothing can touch you, including your own aliveness. But comfort is a drug. Like any drug, it requires increasing doses to maintain the same effect. You need more security, more entertainment, more convenience, more validation. But the fundamental emptiness remains because comfort cannot create meaning, only mask its absence. Jung called this the problem of the middle-aged person, the crisis that occurs when people realize that all their comforts have not produced the fulfillment they were promised. But this crisis isn't limited to middle age anymore. It's happening to 20-somethings who've been optimizing for comfort since childhood. And here's the brutal truth. The system needs you to mistake comfort for happiness because comfortable people are controllable people. They don't take risks, challenge authority, or create disruption. They consume and comply, mistaking their quiet desperation for contentment. But Jung understood that the psyche has its own agenda. Independent of your comfort-seeking ego, it will create crisis, depression, anxiety, and restlessness to force you out of your comfortable prison. What you call mental health problems might actually be your soul's rebellion against a life that's too small for your potential. The age of comfortable unconsciousness is ending. The old systems are cracking under the weight of their own contradictions. What emerges next depends on whether enough individuals find the courage to individuate, to become conscious, authentic, self-determining beings. You came to this video seeking signs that you're living by others' rules. You found them. Now the only question that matters is, what are you going to do about it? The revolution begins with a single authentic choice. Make it now, or make it never. But stop pretending you don't have the power to choose. Your life is waiting. Your authentic self is calling. The only question left is, are you brave enough to answer?